Most difficult obstacle they have to overcome is that if we go in on the side of the rebels, we'll be going in on the side of al-Qaeda, and most of us think we've been fighting al-Qaeda for 10 or 12 years now. So it's a hard obstacle, or a big obstacle to overcome. They may overcome it in the Senate if it becomes a partisan vote. Everybody's trying to say this isn't Iraq, but it also isn't a good situation when we're going in allied to al-Qaeda. I don't know if it'll pass in the House, though. I really have my doubts about whether it passes in the House.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. That was Senator Rand Paul yesterday, making the rounds on the Sunday shows. Joining us now to talk about the impending military action, possible military action, or maybe Assad accepts Kerry's offer here, is Malcolm Hoenlein, Executive Vice Chair, Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. Hello, sir. How are you, Malcolm? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Steve.
Thank you
Good
very
to
much.
be with you.
Thank you. Okay, so your stand, your organization stands on what should happen here. Should the Congress okay the president's action? Should they go in? Should the president go in without congressional approval if need be?
Well, we certainly hope that this can be a unified stance, whatever decision is taken, and one that sends a clear message to the countries in the region, and particularly to Iran and its allies, Hezbollah and Hamas and others, who are going to be watching this very carefully. And if they see that the red lines mean nothing, and if the determination of the president can be negated, and the message to all of them will be very clear. And of course, particular concern is the Iranian nuclear weapons program, which also is a red line. So our hope is that we can have a unified stand that addresses this issue. We hope a military action can be avoided, but we have to show that that there's credibility behind our words, because the only language that terrorists understand is strength. And in Syria, as I just heard the comment before by Senator Paul, neither side is good. Neither option is good. But to allow the use of weapons of mass destruction, of chemical weapons, which have been banned for decades, would be the worst possible signal.
But you feel that we know for sure? I mean, I keep hearing from John Kerry that he was a prosecutor, and he doesn't have to prove this beyond a reasonable doubt. But Assad said, "Show me the proof." People in Congress that I've heard from have said they were more apt to vote yes before they got their confidential briefings, because they don't see the proof that this was Assad or ordered by Assad.
Well, I think it's a legitimate question. I think it's a responsibility of the administration to make a credible case to the members of Congress. I think that members of Congress also have to take courageous stands. It can't be just what the polls show, and understandably, the American people, all of us, do not want to get engaged in another war, another extended battle in the region. And this critical question, whether it'll be resolved by the testimony of the UN inspectors, who, for some reason, are taking so long to come out with a clear statement. And I'm not sure that even when we get it, it'll say who's responsible.
No, that's not their mandate.
They're just going to tell us that, in fact, it was sarin gas and that they have all the symptoms, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not sure that there's anything that clarifies it beyond the evidence that the administration has till now. And if Congress members are not convinced, then they're not going to vote for it. And I know that the tide is, of course, against it, but we have to think beyond the immediate moment and the natural response to this. And we're not pushing for a particular action. We didn't endorse any particular legislation.
You mean the conference? Okay.
Right. And despite what Pat Buchanan or others say, none of that is true. What we have said is that we believe there has to be a clear message. If we don't, look, you have North Korea, you have many other countries who have these kind of WMDs. By the way, it should remind us of why everybody should be applauding what Israel did, taking out Syria's nuclear reactor, right? Everybody was quick to condemn it, as they did with Iraq, but everybody afterwards can sigh a big sigh of relief, because Israel removed what could have been an even more dangerous threat to the current situation.
Absolutely. Well, much as they should have applauded Israel when they did in Iraq, what they did. But let me ask you a question. if Israel and Saudi Arabia, who has, so much of our most sophisticated weapons, I don't even know if they ever picked one up and used it. Why don't they do it? Why doesn't Israel, who's perfectly capable and I'm sure perfectly willing, but would never be allowed to be a member of a coalition that includes the United States for political reasons, why doesn't Israel do it and Saudi Arabia do it? Or, why is it the United States? The Israel was told by the U.S. reportedly, don't you dare go after Iran, because if Hezbollah is unleashed in the U.S., we will hold you, Israel, responsible, which is a sick thought process. But having said that, Syria and Hezbollah and Iran are all saying all bets are off if Israel bombs Syria. So we're running the same risk of it happening now.
We're running the same risk, but Israel is not the issue here in this case, nor is it Israel that is, I think, frankly, the one that is facing the great threat. I think some of our other allies, Israel will defend itself. There's no party now. Even Hezbollah can rain some rockets, and Syria knows full well that Assad's last day will be the day he attacks, if he tries to use a chemical weapon or tries to attack Israel. And even Iran knows that this will be the trigger that will unleash the response that everybody is hoping and waiting for. But again, as you said, it wants Israel to do. In this case, it can't be Israel. Israel should. This changes the nature of the conflict. Then it gets into the whole Arab-Israeli issue, etc. Do most of the Arab countries hope Israel will do it? Yes. Do they hope that they'll do Iran? Yes. They've told me that. But you can't shift every situation onto this. The international community has a responsibility, and it shouldn't be just the U.S. When you see 100,000 people dead, not just the 1,400, and we were silent all this time, there were at least 14 times that chemical weapons were used.
Well, that's the
Where was everybody?
Well, that's the
Why
argument being made against the president right now.
An American official said to me, only 10 or 12 were killed each time. I said, what? What kind of an answer?
Who said that to you, Malcolm?
A very good guy who I think was not thinking about what the response would be. But what he was saying is, look, that didn't rise to the level.
Right, because not enough people were killed. Only if more. Malcolm, I'm up against a hard break,
okay.
but I know you got a meeting. I thank you very much, sir.
My pleasure.
Take care. Malcolm Hoenlein, ladies and gentlemen. That's interesting. An administration official said to him, chemical weapons were used in the past, but only 10 or 12 people were killed. That's news right here on the Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV and